Hi, everyone. I'm Carrie Cassidy from Project Camelot, and I just want to sort of pull apart this mythology that is taking place as a result of what people think is the death of Charlie Kirk. Because according to my information and my research and my own intuition, he is not dead. He was part of a well planned white hat operation that goes back probably at least a year and maybe more than 1 year. And I believe that they use this opportunity to kill more than one bird with one stone, so to speak, especially to mislead the dark hats, at least from the outset, and then also for them to track and trace the sort of people on the street type enemies that they have, and possibly others plotting for nefarious acts in the very near future. So everyone who follows Juan O'Savin and Nino will know that they have been talking about some kind of guerrilla warfare happening, some possible change up in this financial system. And as a result of that prediction, which I could show you, there's a triangle that Nino shows on his latest shows, and it shows you all the sort of levels of obstacles that they think are coming in the future. And we're kind of at the top of the triangle, which has to do with, again, guerrilla war coming from the dark side because they're losing ground. Although I don't necessarily see their position the same as Juan or Nino. And I've kind of made that clear over the years because I have been interviewing whistleblowers from above top secret for 20 years now. And as a result of that, my perspective is different than your average human walking around. So I just want to say that you may not agree with me. I want to precept this by saying that I love Juan and Nino and the whole White Hat team. And that goes way back. I've been working with them since 2010. Of course, I was kind of kicked off the team by Juan because he was afraid that I would see through his facade, which I did. And then I posted a lot of information out there on shows and on my website, which is still there, showing how he does his disguise and the fact that he's JFK Jr. And it goes from there. So if you're not familiar with my work, or you're not familiar with those shows and my postings, I have made them available. All you have to do is go onto my website and under search, just put JFK. You don't even have to add the junior. And you will come across all the pages with information, photos, videos, where I explain how I got to know John, and met him in person several times, and have had sort of an ongoing, I don't know what you want to call it, contentious relationship with him. It was very friendly at first, and then, he actually thought that I wasn't on the right page for the White Hats, because I'm a person who really wants to get the truth out. That works against their agenda. They are using a lot of the dark side operational, type operations and ways of behaving, trajectories, plans, etc., to carry out their own false flags, fake assassinations, and other things of that nature, to take the audience, to take the people, and to do what, even people in power have always done, which is to manipulate you in the direction where they want you to go. Now, the fact that their sort of objectives are positive does not change the fact that they're using sort of negative reinforced activities, if you will. They're lying, they're deceiving, they're using all the intelligence, operational procedures and so on to basically get the people to act in certain ways that they want to see and to actually push their game plan along so eventually they can get rid of the dark side. So they have good intentions, but sometimes their operational procedures are not totally in the light, if you will. And I can understand that. In times of war, we do what we have to survive and to save the lives of the people around us. So that is their first priority. I honor that. However, I also think that people need to be told the truth, and there's times when they kind of overdo their misleading tactics. Okay, so in that light, I'm going to now proceed to tell you the way I see the Charlie Kirk fake, false flag, fake assassination, whatever you want to call it. It doesn't mean I'm going to be completely right on every detail, but I think in the end, you may end up agreeing with me, even if you started this video thinking that I was crazy, which is fine. I don't care. But you're going to see that these things do add up to the actual truth. So I think there are a lot of people out there, astute people who realize that there are so many things about this whole performance, and it was a performance, that don't fit. When I tell you my points of view, which I've already put on my Substack and on my Telegram in bits and pieces, kind of backed up with videos and clips and this and that, you're going to understand why I see things the way I do. So first of all, let me say that I have gathered over the years and following the White Hats since at least 2010, when I was also writing articles about them and for them, working with Paladin, doing some interviews with him about the coming financial changes that have not really, at least ostensibly, taken place quite yet. But I think we're right on the verge of that. And I think that's part of the reason they decided to do this operation now. Although I think there's an extenuating circumstance when you look at all the evidence that if you don't have this front and center in your mind, you need to know the ultimate objective and why Charlie Kirk was the person chosen for the operation. And so the understanding here is that even from 107, but also from other sources, somehow it got leaked that Charlie Kirk was a sort of chosen as a possible presidential candidate to follow in the footsteps of Trump. Trump's not going to live forever. Some of us might wish he would, but he's not dead. He's alive. He is in hiding a good part of the time. It's true. There are several doubles of Trump, shorter, fatter doubles for the most part. But the real guy, I believe, is still around and showing up from time to time. So I know that this weekend, I believe it is, that they're going to have this whole funeral procession, I don't know, mourning thing, whatever, commemoration, call it what you will. And it just troubles me that so many people are going to be deceived and in pain, really, over the fact that Charlie Kirk may have actually died, that he has this lovely family that was left behind, and so forth. So I just want this to be put into your understanding to see where you might fall as far as understanding why they lie to you, what's their motivation, and all about the White Hats operations in general. So this is not the first time I ever made a video about the subject, but I haven't for a while. I just kind of got tired of doing that sort of thing, because sometimes they just take it as criticism. And it's not actually criticism in this traditional sense. What I'm interested in is for people to take seriously that the White Hats could be doing things a bit differently, that they could be raising the bar, that we could ask for Juan, for example, to raise the bar, to come forward out of his disguise, to tell the truth about who he really is and why he had to be in hiding. Because if you don't understand what they do and why they do it, then you're not really learning. They think they're teaching you certain truths, and perhaps they are, but they're not teaching you the real truths. And this is very important for humanity to grow. So it's all very nice to have a team that's working on our behalf to fight the dark side, but they can't do it alone. And I just did a lecture in Vegas about that topic and why they need us, which is really very obvious. And they wouldn't make such a big thing over the vote if they didn't need you. Okay, so understand that you and your point of view and your consciousness is very much impacting the trajectory of planet Earth, the future of your children, and where we're going from here. Okay, so I have lots of notes and data to refer to. And so I'm going to kind of go down it. And then I also have, so let me direct you to my website, projectcamelotportal.com. And I also have a Substack with the exact same article. So both of those have, obviously, Charlie Kirk was a wonderful guy from all intents and purposes. And let me say that I did not know him. In fact, I never saw him speak or anything like that. So I was not familiar with him when I first saw him, when the first news came out that he had been killed, supposedly shot at, on stage. And let me also say that since then, I have listened to various speeches of his and can see that he was quite a brilliant guy. He certainly seemed to have his heart in the good place. And he had a lovely family, and they all looked wonderful. I will say that, that as far as I was concerned initially, this was obvious that this was an operation, but then that's kind of how I see the world. I'm totally aware of how much deception is out there, and most of the time I get it right for what it's worth, and so on. So in this situation, I will say that if you read my banner here, you will also see that it was staged, and I'm basically saying this is a great opportunity to come forward and tell the audience the truth. But they are going to choose not to do that. They're choosing to continue what I call the dog and pony show, which is unfortunate that they're doing it that way, but that's kind of how it's been. So I just want to say that I believe the best way for them to start approaching the people, since this is going on now since 2016. So I'm not sure how many years is that, maybe 11 years or more. And the bottom line is that they've been lying to the people on and off whenever they, decided to do an operation or decided to try to change the trajectory of, what they're doing. And I think their excuse would be, well, they put it on the Q posts, a lot of it. And they did. A lot of the Q posts do have hints about various things that they'd be doing. And they did work with an AI, so they got a lot of that stuff maybe pretty correct. However, it's more important on the human level. As I say, who is going to save your soul if not you? And if you're not going to make decisions that are actually in the best interests of humanity, in spite of what fight you're fighting, throughout the centuries, we have had all kinds of people, whether they're in armor, like in the days of Camelot, or, fighting wars and so on and so forth. They're fighting under a king, supposedly, or a queen. And this is how it goes. But they make decisions for you by and large. And all they do is sort of ask for your support. Basically, put up and shut up for the most part. And if you speak up, then you are in sort of danger, I guess you might say. You're not just in danger from the dark side, you're also in danger from the white hats themselves. But I have been risking this for a very long time. I've gone through this in more than one century of my life or lives, and even going back to the days of Camelot. So, interestingly enough, King Arthur's Camelot Round Table is made up of most of our whistleblowers, I believe, and it's written about in my book if you want to know more about that whole saga. I will say it's no accident that Wano Savin, who is leading the charge, he's a high level, I don't know, someone told me he's higher than a general in this war of worlds that we're involved in. And so he's making the strategic decisions along with generals. Supposedly 200 generals chose Trump. And then the AI they're using, which they say is quote unquote carbon based, that doesn't mean it's honest. And it still can be manipulated as a carbon based human can be manipulated. But they think they know what they're doing. And oftentimes it does look like they do, sometimes not. So back to Charlie Kirk. So why would they stage his death? First of all, one can assume, and it is now out in the press, that Israel and Charlie Kirk were not really getting along all that well, that Netanyahu had recently had reason to perhaps be suspicious that Charlie Kirk, who they would of course know is a selection for being president in the near future, was not going to agree with their positions on things. And Israel, for those that don't know, is run by the Anunnaki. I have lots of evidence of that going back in my work with whistleblowers who have talked about it. One of my most famous whistleblowers was Command Sergeant Robert O. Dean, or Bob Dean, and he said that the Anunnaki are walking the halls of the Pentagon. That was about in 2010 or so. So ever since then, I've also been on the trail of the Anunnaki, and I have reason to believe that a lot of my information is correct in that regard. Now, I don't think that all Anunnaki are necessarily negatively based. I believe they may have some splits. I believe there may be some good Anunnaki somewhere in the mix. I also believe that there is a race of beings helping me do my work. So I just want to acknowledge them. I've got evidence of that. I could perhaps talk at more length at another time. I have talked about it in the past, but suffice to say that I have many people that try to come to me and tell me what they think is going to be in the future, what they think like 3-Eye Atlas is all about, what they think this new swan, so-called craft or comet or craft disguised as a comet, so-and-so, is about, and so on and so forth. They talk about the Galactic Federation, etc. And the Galactic Federation is infiltrated, and it didn't just stop being infiltrated because of some arbitrary something. There are certain people out there saying things about this that are absolutely wrong. I have found over the years that my intuition is very strong, that I'm often correct when it looks like everybody else around me thinks the opposite. So I've learned to, I guess you might say, rely on my intuition and downloads. And so that's how I'm coming forward at this time, understanding that I know there's a lot of naysayers out there and people that think they know what they're doing more so, and so on and so forth. That's fine. So I just want to say that in terms of Charlie Kirk, and I'm going to go to this article again. If you look at, and I've got tons of articles, so let me just click on this. So it's called The Charlie Hoax and the White Hat Operations, Enough with the Lies, and that speaks for itself. And the bottom line is that JFK Jr. is a very important part of this whole design, because he actually designed the false flag, or the so-called assassination of Charlie Kirk, along the lines of what he went through and how it's worked for him. And I have no doubt that he's trained Charlie or given him training to make him able to handle everything that's happening to him right now, being in hiding, going into witness protection, however they decided to design that. And like I said, I believe that the actors involved, which includes his wife, I wouldn't include the children, probably don't know much about that aspect of things. But certainly all of the people that are the top level MAGA people, if you want to call them that, or the white hats or whatever, that means Kash Patel, Dan Bongino, are having to play their role. They're having to toe the line, to go with the party line that Juan sets forward, Juan and the team set forward. And they set this forward again and trained for this operation at least a year ago, possibly longer. And you can think of this as an acting job. Okay, so let's go to Tyler Robinson, who is supposedly the quote unquote, shooter, and understand that he was trained. Okay, and he's basically an actor. He's also a brilliant young soldier. He was probably recruited by the White Hats. So you can imagine, how could he be trained? You might be asking. And you can tell him, well, let's watch Robert De Niro movies and Taxi Driver and try to understand, how do you look when you're being MK Ultra'd, and how should you act, and what should you do to play your role, and so on and so forth. And these dialogues, supposed messages between him and his so-called lover, all of that can be manufactured. All of it can be planned in advance. Both guys can be on the payroll of the White Hats. You have to understand that if you're going to do an operation, it's like putting on a play or making a movie. And because I come from Hollywood for 20 years, I'm very familiar with the idea of faking reality to make everything look even more real than real. And that's what you aim for. So in this case, I would say that Tyler Robinson is playing his part. He may be using sort of some mind-altering drugs. He may even be getting some small hypnosis during certain aspects of his actions in order to keep him going. He also would be prepared to sit in prison, for example, and for them to stage him to be suicided, like the fake death of Epstein, or killed in prison, or in some situation where he's being transferred, just like in a movie, from one prison to another, so on and so forth. So you don't just have one aspect of a false flag. And, I've done dozens of interviews a long time ago with Ole Damagard. So I don't know what he thinks about this current operation, but if he's half as smart as he always was, he's going to know the whole thing was staged. What I'm finding, though, is that people, even the ones in the know, like me, are not able to say the actual truth, the real truth. They might hint at it, but they're all playing nice. They're all trying to stay on Trump and Juan's good side. And you could think of Trump as, yes, the president. Well, Juan played, or actually was, the vice president up until, I guess Vance was brought on board. Now, they've been acting parts. All the White Hats have been acting parts long before they got into the public eye, and even when they were brought in, sworn in, to do certain things like Kash Patel and Dan Bongino and all the rest. So understand that they were totally prepared, that they would have to play parts during this time, and this will not be the last time they probably have to play a part. So they will know the truth, and they will have to act according to the truth that they're trying to sell to the people for a purpose. And usually the purpose is a good purpose. So they maybe don't even I think that Dan Bongino really hates playing a part like that. Some people really don't like to lie to the people, regardless of the reason, even to save somebody's life. Other people have no problem with that and can do it very easily. So I just want to say that if you look at this scenario, you're going to see that Charlie Kirk was, first of all, he wasn't even the guy sitting in the chair. So this is where I started to get involved. I saw some footage of him sitting on a lawn prior to the event, talking to some people. Was quite short term. He stood up. He looked quite skinny. And I don't think I've ever seen him before, as far as I know. I mean, maybe in passing or something on some video, but I really was not aware of him or his work. And obviously, what I've heard about him and his work is that he did excellent work and he's fabulous. And I've seen him, he's a wonderful speaker and so on and so forth. And I like the fact that he's argumentative like me and not afraid to speak his mind. So that's a very big plus. So anyway, he stood up and he walked away and he looked sort of tall and slender. When I saw him supposedly sit down in the chair, he suddenly seemed to have gained weight. His face was fatter, and I just took note of it. I just am like that, okay? It's just like when I first met 107, I knew he was supposed to be JFK Jr. I thought he was psychically for years before I met him in person. But when I met him, I couldn't believe the disguise he was wearing, and I just was completely confused because back then I wasn't really familiar with meeting a person who was wearing a body mask as well as a mask over their entire face. And also he does something with his hands. I'm not sure if he shoots them up with some kind of steroids or what, but he makes them fatter. So they fit the fat body, and he wears more than one pair of pants. I mean, I've gone through all of that. So what Charlie Kirk all of a sudden did not look like the guy I just saw sitting on the grassy knoll. So immediately I went on guard and started looking at what was being shown to me. And then I saw him get hit in the throat, what looked like in the throat, and slump over. Okay, so it goes really fast, and then you see it over and over again, and it's been out there, and they've analyzed it like everywhere. And the bottom line is that Tyler Robinson was not the shooter. He was a decoy. He did not shoot the bullet from the top of the building, what looked like miles away, not sure the exact distance. And he, again, was playing a part as the decoy. So they have so-called captured him, and Kash Patel is saying they're going to find some other, accomplices now, and Dan Bongino is saying that. And and George Webb is doing a great job of following the trail on the ground, but he does not seem to understand false flags, and he does not seem to see that this is an operation. Okay, he does not seem to even acknowledge Trump and the White Hats. The White Hats are a military worldwide organization at this point, going back to the Kennedy assassination when they really got galvanized and sort of hit the ground running with their operations. They decided to use a lot of the tactics of the dark that the dark had been using on us. They have all military, ex-military, ex-law enforcement, et cetera, intel agents, you name them, who have come on their side. They have special signs and signals that they use, some of which are, put through Q and Q drops and all that. So if you don't know that, I'm just explaining. Obviously, many people watching this will know the whole scenario, but they might not know that this is one of their operations. So I just want to say that because they decided that this young man was going to be their presidential candidate, and they've been grooming him now for years. In fact, I saw evidence that he might have been groomed as far back as 2010 by the White Hats. So this is not somebody that they're just going to let go in public and just ignore. You must understand if you know the White Hats. And I tried to join them to sign a contract, and they wouldn't let me, or one wouldn't let me. So I can tell you that they vet all their members. That doesn't mean they don't have traitors in their midst. I believe they do. Okay, and sometimes I think I know certain people that are very questionable because I have a really good psychic sense. So the first time I ever met 107 in in person, even though I totally thought he would be JFK Jr. I thought it would be sort of like obvious that he was. But I had no preparation to see him looking like this fat, middle-aged guy with this total mask on. And so I had to, so I looked at him and I said, all I got was on my intuitive level, I got there's something wrong with his face. And I couldn't believe it. And I even have a girlfriend took a picture of me while he was speaking, like just a few feet away from me, to the group that was on that Friday night, invited to Vegas as part of this Sound of Freedom movie that he wanted to screen with us, an advanced screening, and we were all part of the media. I met Nino in person there at that point, and several other of the people that you know are well known. And so Juan O'Salvin spoke there, and he had this completely weird head mask on, as I say, and I tapped into that. But I didn't tell anyone, although I might have said under my breath, there's something wrong with his face, but no one wants to say that about somebody, so I probably kept that to myself. But when I got back from the event, I told one of my close friends that that's what I thought. And then what happened is I had about, I think it happened like 2 months later. So the event happened in February, March, and then in April, there was the Schumann resonance went off the charts one night. I think it was around April 3rd and 4th. I'm not sure. But I got downloads and huge dreams about Trump and Juan O'Salvin. And in my dreams, that lasted all night long and were exactly the same as reality, if not more so than reality. Such that when I woke up, I thought, no, I'm supposed to be back in that reality, not this. But anyway, I immediately texted him because I had been in contact over going to this event and just said, you won't believe the dream I just had. And it was all about him explaining to me how he did his disguise to look like Juan O'Salvin, as well as giving me tons of other information. And those dreams continued for at least a year. Occasionally, I still get dreams, about the white hats and what they're doing and so on and so forth. Some I share and some I don't. And I'm sure, I text Juan a lot, but I think he just ignores my texts by and large. But the NSA, I'm sure, reads them all. And so they still go through to someone. I don't know who. But I do also think on a psychic level, he occasionally does see my texts. Maybe someone brings them to his attention. Who knows? So the thing is that going back to the situation where Charlie Kirk was skinny on the knoll, went in to sit in the chair, looked like he gained weight, even in the face, and then the situation happened. Now, as it happens, I found a video that depicts the mask and how they did the whole sort of shooting thing, so-called shooting thing. And the fact that, there were lots of good videos showing that it was a squib, that yes, he had a mic there, but there was more than that. And that, there was a special mask that allowed for, this operation to occur. And that there was also some kind of, I don't know if it was a fake bullet or what it was, from the phone behind him, not from anywhere else, and so on and so forth. So we're looking at a designed operation. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my my notes here and see and make sure that I don't forget to say anything, because I want to get through all this. Okay, so I'm going to play this clip. I hope it's right here. Okay, so here's a clip I want to play that's going to show you, actually encapsulates the entire thing. And these are in Juan's own words.
Long and short of it is that you're on his stage.
Uh-huh.
When you hide, you go into witness protection. There's different ways you can create an identity. It's much easier to have a shared identity. And do you allow them free somewhere, or do they go to what we call Valhalla, some holding place that's not able to be in communication with the rest of the world, but as a community. And then you can bring them out later on.
Rest now, brother. We have the watch, and I'll see you in Valhalla.
Okay, so I just want to draw your attention to the Secret Service security guy that puts his hand next to Cash. I believe he's a bodyguard. I'm not sure what his real name or job is, but he is actually patting. So the body language is telling me this. Cash Patel has just dropped a bomb telling you the real operation, telling you that, as Juan just said, and I'm going to back that up and play it again, is that Charlie Kirk is not dead, that he's in hiding, that he's in witness protection. Now, Juan has come out on Nino's show numerous times since I was one of the first people who said I believe that Charlie Kirk is in witness protection. So since then, he obviously is trying to run a narrative having to do with this operation they just did. So they have to act it to the end. It's kind of like, it's like if you saw, there's a great con movie with Will Smith, and it's called The Focus, and it's fabulous. And that shows you like a con job, how it's carried out, all the cons. And the one thing they tell you in that movie is they can never give up on the con before they achieve their objective. So they have to stick with the con. So right now, the con is basically this sort of performance of the death of Charlie Kirk, killed by a crazy, left-wing radical who has a trans boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever you want to call that person, and was out of his mind, not liking Kirk and wanting to cause mayhem. So that's the party line of what people believe happened. They believe this lone gunman theory, which is never true. This guy is run. He's completely controlled. And in my view of it, I think he's trained to be part of the operation. So I think Tyler Robinson, if you look into his background, was absolutely brilliant. He's a soldier. He's a trained military guy with a great mind who excelled in his schooling. And he was a really sort of probably gung-ho to be part of anything. And in this case, he was faking being a left-winger. Even if he did have some left-wing sort of holdovers in his mind, he was recruited by the White Hats. And I'm sure he would see it as a good cause behind the scenes. So when you look at what Cash Patel just said, I'll see you in Valhalla, it's clear that he knows that he was breaking with the con and telling people the truth. But he wanted to do that, I would imagine, because either he was under orders that he could do that, because there are a good part of MAGA that are really trying to figure this out. And this is throwing us a bone, in essence, to let us know that we're on the right track, that this was faked, but they have to stick with it. Okay, so Cash, I think, was given that, role at that moment. And then he goes right back into, having to lie and keep up the facade and say they're going to look for other gunmen when they know exactly who the gunmen are, whoever they had chosen to hold the phone, to have the cons on the stage and all the signaling that went on and this and that. So now I'm going to back this up, because what you have to understand when you listen to this is that when this was shot, which I don't know the exact date, but it was a long time prior to this whole operation happening, I believe. And by the way, he's in the Trump Hotel. I recognize it because I just stayed there, and I stay there all the time when I am in Vegas. So, and Juan stays there all the time too when he's in Vegas, as most people know. So what happens is he is explaining to you what happened to him, what he was part of. So he knows this intimately. He's speaking from experience. So listen again, understand who's talking and his level of expertise in this particular area. Okay?
Long and short of it is that you're on his stage. When you hide, you go into witness protection. There's different ways you can create an identity. It's much easier to have a shared identity.
Now let me stop it there. So a shared identity. Why did he say that? Okay, about a person who was going to go into witness protection. Because he has a shared identity. There are two Wano Sabins. I've met both of them. I've talked to both of them in person. I've looked in, very close to their faces, looked in their eyes. I even went up to the real one and just took my hand and actually opened his eyes. He didn't even stop me. And just to prove, because the real one has brown eyes and the fake one has blue eyes. And so I just want to say that that's why he's talking about having a shared identity, because obviously that's how they set him up. When he went into witness protection, they decided the best way for him to operate was to have a sidekick, and his sidekick is called Wayne Willett. Okay, has blue eyes, totally different vibe, but is about the same height as Juan, which is, I think they're a little over 6 feet. And I, like I said, have met both of them in person and talked with them at length. Okay, so let me continue.
And do you allow them free somewhere, or do they go to what we call Valhalla, some holding place that's not able to be in communication with the rest of the world, but as a community, and then you can bring them out later on?
Rest now, brother. We have the watch, and I'll see you in Valhalla.
Then they say that they'll bring them out later, meaning they're still alive, they're in witness protection, they're in hiding, and they obviously probably have disguises in that, but they also actually are, brought out later. I think that's the plan. It's always the plan. So that, because living in witness protection is probably kind of like hell, and especially for someone like John Kennedy, I'm sure that has been very difficult for him, but he also seems to have, sort of relished in it, the actor side of him, playing this sort of game with society for so long, which has been going on for God knows how long. So I guess since 1999, I guess was when he was supposed to be killed. So, and Carolyn's still alive and she survived and all this kind of thing, okay? And I know certain things I'm not going to reveal, et cetera, about that situation and his life and behind the scenes. So I just want people to understand that they tell you, that is even an Illuminati thing. They have to tell you before they do something. And that way, if you're too stupid and you're still deceived, then you deserve it, okay? Basically, that's their philosophy. So understand that is part of this scenario that we're talking about. Now, I'm going to go back to my notes. Hopefully, I can get them here and see if I can touch on some things that I forgot to mention. So there are lots of good researchers out there, and they are putting out all kinds of good stuff, which I appreciate, and I can usually read through something and see immediately if it is truth or lies. And I have been proven right enough to satisfy myself over the years, time and time again. So talking about the freedom of speech thing, talking about what Trump and Juan and Pam Bondi have been saying about, trying to stop the Democrats from hate speech and all this stupid shit, is also what the Democrats were trying to do, when the fake Biden was dead, never took office. And if you don't know that, you really don't know anything. But for those that don't know that, that was the whole thing, the whole time when Biden was dead was a white hat operation. Our entire country was operating under that. False pretenses, okay? So, but for a reason, because Biden was a pedophile, is a pedophile, but he's dead. And so his wife was his facilitator. I saw witness testimony that it disappeared off the web. I guess somebody put it there so I would see it. I'm not sure what, but it went into detail about he was brought children even when he was running for vice president, and so on. So the guy was really a sicko. And the fact that they want to have a statue to him in Washington, D.C. is just insane. These people just don't know anything. They are so blinded by their wishful thinking about life. And I'm talking about the Democrats in this case, that I pity them so much. And I wish they would wake the fuck up. And I'm sure everyone else does too. So basically, we've got also this issue with a threat from Israel. Obviously, Charlie Kirk was making rumblings and was in touch with Netanyahu, and Netanyahu was making him offers to bring him on the side of speaking well of Israel and Israelis and so on. And Israel is run by the Anunnaki. That's why that country does not act much like any country that you've ever known about. Now, other countries are also run by ETs, so don't get too carried away when I tell you this. But there's no doubt whatsoever that Israel is run by the Anunnaki, according to my witness testimonies, all right? And that goes back to Bob Dean, the major that dealt with the Yetis, the Sasquatch, and I have 3 interviews with him. This famous journalist called Barry Shamish, who found out about the Anunnaki as just a member of society in Israel, where housewives were reporting these tall beings coming into their homes in the middle of the afternoon. And he started writing about it in the Israeli newspaper. I know that they have a major base at Dimona, where the nuclear base is, and so on and so forth. So there's no doubt whatsoever that the Anunnaki are running Israel. So some of these people, the puppets like Netanyahu, yes, they're puppets. They might even be willing puppets, but they're puppets nonetheless. So when you're trying to put all Israelis into one bucket, that would be a huge mistake. And Charlie Kirk was quite right that they were trying to having a revolution in Israel, because the people are no longer falling for this nonsense and for the decimation of another race of beings, which is the Palestinians, and that basic genocide. So all of that is coming to the fore and probably going to have more ramifications in the future. But nonetheless, that whole scenario is part of the backdrop under which they created this false flag or false assassination plot to protect a very important asset, if you will, Charlie Kirk and his family. So it's a good cause. The operation is still going. Like I said, they're all going to keep playing their parts, and so on and so forth. I just hate seeing people deceived all the time. I don't think that's the way to change the world, but it's their choice. So, sorry. Tina Peters should have been released when Trump got back into office this second time. Why she wasn't, I have no idea. It sounds insane to me. She was clearly working for the White Hats. She's been in prison way too long. They should release her right away, give her a medal, and so on and so forth. I've written an article about that, and it's on my Substack. Three Eye Atlas, I've done several interviews about that with David Sereda and Jimmy Blanchett, both of whom are very excellent scientists tracking Three Eye Atlas on their trajectory. I've made videos about this, and Richard C. Hoagland is also on board with David Serrata's mathematics. So what came forward in those interviews that I was doing and in the mathematics is the fact that this ship is related to Nibiru and the Anunnaki. What it's doing in our solar system, possibly forcing or pushing a kind of disclosure, maybe working with the secret space program, maybe they're part of an operation, what they intend to do, where they're going to, go, whether they'll stay on the trajectory or not, remains to be seen. But I do highly recommend our interviews. And actually, even tonight is Saturday night and Sunday night. Richard C. Hoagland has been blocked from even communicating with his phone. So as a former NASA scientist, they're afraid he's going to come out and tell the truth. So I highly recommend that you try to tune into his radio show if we make it online tonight. There's no guarantees, okay? So I just want you to look at the scenario a little bit here and see how the Anunnaki and Israel seem to be involved heavily in what's a white hat operation, and then also in sending in a ship that conveniently comes from Nibiru. That's where they've tracked it from, and is headed to be close to special alignments that are happening December 19th, as well as going near Mars, Jupiter, Venus, and sort of close to the Earth. They could turn at any time, go in any direction they want. It's definitely a very large craft. It's about 28 miles around or across, is my understanding, from Avi Loeb, the scientist that has come forward and is doing a Substack called Medium and writing articles on the fact that it could easily be an alien ship. It is an alien ship. I think it's mostly operated by AI, okay, or even androids and AI. So that's what I get. Now, there are people out there that think they know what it's about and are telling you it's all lovely and it's going to help you ascend and do all kinds of nice things. That's all bullshit, in my opinion. Take your pick. I think that a lot of people out there are not honest. They take their information from bad sources because they have not really honed their psychic ability. So you can just decide what you like and fall for it, basically. And I'll leave you with this final slide from my presentation that I did in Vegas just recently. Only an educated and informed people will be a free people, and that is John F. Kennedy. Thank you very much for watching, and take care.